Yo, 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 yo. Grace and peace. Grace and peace. Welcome to the reassembling. I'm flickering in the background, but it's all good.
It's flickering.
I'm a little flickered. I'm a little flickered. Grace and peace, family. Welcome back to the reassembling. I am Jesse Walsh, and with me is Mom. It's Mimsy. It's Ma'am. Raven, co-laborer and steady voice of clarity when the world decides to juggle chainsaws in the dark. This is where we confront hard questions, rebuild truth brick by brick, and keep Christ at the center of it all. We're not here for shallow takes, fear-driven faith, or recycled church cliches. We're here for grace with backbone, compassion with conviction, and truth that actually stands up under pressure. So if this show strengthens you, challenges you, or points you closer to Christ, subscribe, share it, and grow with us. You can find us on TikTok, X Clapper, Kick, Rumble, Insta, and the Book Face. Now let's reassemble what the world tried to scatter. So today, guys, seeing we're continuing our satanic panic nonsense. We're continuing our series on the Satanic Panic, but this episode, it has a different weight to it. So far, we've let's backtrack if you guys are just tuning in. We've been looking at the cultural world of the 1970s, 80s, 90s, the rumors, the books, the talk shows, the so-called experts. The experts, the backmasking, the police training, and the way ordinary Americans were taught to believe satanic cults were hiding behind everything from rock music to daycare centers. Some of it sounds ridiculous now, and honestly, some of it is ridiculous then. America saw a teenager wearing black and acted like it had just cracked the Zodiac case with a youth group newsletter.
Right.
Tonight, we're looking at what happens when the panic walks into a courtroom. We're talking about the West Memphis 3, if you guys have seen the thumbnail. And it's interesting. This very subject is what sparked our playlist for the Satanic Panic. We wanted to go back and get the context.
Right.
What's going on? And we'll cut, let's cut to it. 3 little boys were murdered: Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers.
Were they all 8? I think they're all 8.
They were all 8. They were real children with real families, real personalities, and people who loved them. What happened to them was evil, horrifying, and their families deserved justice. So we're not glorifying the deaths of these 3.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's why this matters in this case. Justice cannot be built on panic. Before we get into the courtroom evidence, and this is going to be great when we pull up the evidence and stuff. Mom is going to help us slow down. Look at the 3 teenagers who were blamed for these murders: Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jessie Misskelley Jr. Not as saints, not as villains, but as teenagers living in a specific place at a specific time inside a culture already terrified of satanic crime. Because once fear takes over, people stop seeing human beings and start seeing characters in a horror story. So
it's so true.
Let's learn a little bit about these alleged teenagers, Mom.
Yeah, let's maybe we could start with the video, Jess. I don't think it's very long, but it just gives you a little bit more information of what we're discussing tonight.
Okay. Let's pull this to this guy here. I like this view right here. That way you can see us up close and personal.
3 young boys were found murdered in 1993, but the case that followed was even more disturbing than the crime itself. The bodies of 3 8-year-old boys were discovered in a wooded area, bound and mutilated. Panic spread, and suspicion quickly turned to 3 local teens. Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jessie Misskelley, dubbed the West Memphis 3, were arrested and charged. But their conviction was based on a coerced confession and zero physical evidence. The prosecution fueled the hysteria of the 90s Satanic Panic, claiming the boys were sacrificed in a ritual. The jury bought it, and the verdict? Guilty. For 18 years, they sat behind bars, until DNA evidence proved none of them were at the crime scene. Public outcry grew, celebrities rallied, and the case was reopened. In 2011, they took an Alford plea maintaining their innocence while accepting a guilty verdict to finally walk free. But justice, it was never truly served. Was this a tragic mistake or a cover-up? The real killer remains unknown. What do you believe? 3 young boys were found murdered in 1993.
Yeah.
I'm like, How did
Very tragic.
not only do I have to question how did the families of the little boys move on, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then how did Damien and is it James? Yeah. And Jessie move on.
Jason Baldwin.
Jason, I'm sorry, not James. Yeah, it's like I have mad respect for these three guys. I really
Yeah,
do. They went through hell.
they did.
Nothing was right, but at the time when we watched Paradise Lost back in the 90s, yeah, I thought they were guilty, right? And
Yeah, we
even
all
now,
did.
after they've been released, and I look at the chat still, the comments, and some people still think they're guilty. I'm like, how do you
Crazy.
come to that conclusion, right?
Yeah, I know, right? It's
That's
still they'll never shake that either. It's very sad. They'll never shake that.
Yeah. And so, I'm really glad we're doing this series on Satanic Panic, Jess, because this goes way back to even the Salem witch trials.
Oh yeah.
It's still going on today with the deliverance ministers. You
Mhm.
gotta blame Satan for everything, right?
Blame Satan.
I'm just so done with it, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
I know. I hear you. I hear you.
So, I wanted to, talk a little bit about the life of these teenage boys, what life
Okay.
is like for them, right? Because they're labeled as being these evil, demonic, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
So with
It's
Damien,
ridiculous.
his family was poor and they moved around a lot. He did have some other relatives sometimes he lived with, right? And he described his childhood as neglectful and unstable. That's sad, right?
That's
And
sad.
he was an outsider at school, and that he later dropped out of high school. He did like to wear dark clothing. He did love heavy metal music. He loved Metallica, right? But here's the thing: he was interested in the occult, and I'll get a little bit into it, not too deep. But they were in the Bible Belt, a very
Oh boy, were they?
a very conservative town. And I find it interesting, Jess. I was thinking about this today, that when they got out, I don't really know the religious beliefs of Jessie and Jason, but Damien was more interested in Wicca and the occult and some other things, right? I found it interesting they weren't really interested in Christianity after this.
That's saying something. Yeah, for sure.
Isn't that disturbing?
I would say, would you say that they were kind of like maybe independent fundamental Baptists, King James onlyists, or what? Are we talking? What kind of Christians are we talking?
I don't know, but the way they acted, I think they probably were Baptists.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
And there's no love. There's no love of God. That doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
I just found it interesting. Not so interested in Christianity once they grow up.
Just saying.
That's sad to me, right? Okay, so let's see. So he was stereotyped. He's a troubled teen. Kind of kept to himself. He liked to wear his black clothing, listening to heavy music. They're just like, well, he's just very strange. Something very odd about him, right? I'm the type of person I'd probably go hang out with Damien instead of. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
I'm weird, right? So
we're all weird at some point.
Then Jason Baldwin was raised by his mother and stepfather. Oh, his father was a very strict Baptist preacher.
Oh, it sounds okay. It sounds about right.
I don't hear Jason saying much about God either.
Not in the Christian sense.
Right? Now, Jason was very, very intelligent, and he was doing good academically, right? Especially in math and science. So to me, Jason would be more like a kind of a nerd guy, right? Why would they like him, right? He didn't have a troubled, pattern of getting into trouble or whatever. He was a good kid, right?
So, yeah, he was a good kid.
We didn't hear about that in the court, did we? So
I think we did from the defendant's side, but prosecution didn't really care. They painted a picture, and we're gonna find out.
And his favorite band was Blue Oyster Cult. Now I like a couple of cult songs. Don't Fear the Reaper. I think that was their biggest hit.
Keyword cult. There you go.
Right. He didn't really have any regular contact with his dad. I think Damien was the same. So I think again we have to look at where are the fathers in this country? We're always slamming single moms, but where are these fathers? So many are stepping out and forgetting about their kids. That doesn't impact these boys. I think it does.
Good point.
Dad? Whole thing's sad, Jess, right?
It is. It is.
And he loved Metallica too. So him and Damien had that in common. It's not so much that, Jason wants to hook up a demon and get in trouble and do all these evil things. They just liked this music, and they hung out together, and they make it seem like, well, they're out there doing, satanic things in their backyard. It's like, right?
Ridiculous. Yeah, it is ridiculous.
Now, I think the saddest teen was Jessie. Jessie had a very low IQ, and the police took advantage of him, and I think that's just horrible, right?
It is. It is, yes.
Yeah, his IQ is between 70 and 73, right? He grew up poor. He had learning disabilities, and the school didn't support him much on those things. That's going to affect him, right? It's like,
yeah, there wasn't a very learned area in West Memphis. Yeah, not to pick on him, but
yeah, and he was also socially isolated. Okay, and he was easily influenced because of his low IQ, and that makes me sad. I was thinking about me and a friend, Gloria. You remember Gloria?
Yeah.
There was this one little boy that you and Chandra knew, I think, and I think he was slightly retarded. Do you remember Marcy Ray?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, we loved Marcy Ray. We always wanted to talk to him, and even when I grew up, there was a girl in our class that was retarded, and I befriended her. I'm like, I used to think, why do we treat those people differently? Why do we kind of ignore them or make fun of them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And I feel like, Jessie Misskelley went through that, which is sad to me. So, his mom died when he was young, and he was raised by his dad. I think his dad seems like a decent guy. I don't know if you saw. Are you? No,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
I apologize.
His mom died when he was 11. He was raised by his dad, and his dad seemed like a decent guy. I don't know if you watched any video. He really loved his son. So,
his dad. Yeah, like his dad.
Yeah. So all three teens grew up in a region that in the early 1990s had little economic opportunities. There's a lot of, not a lot of money going around, right? And it was shaped by conservative cultural norms and heavily influenced by fears of youth subcultures, especially that heavy metal music.
Metal's the devil. We did touch on it with the rock music and the backmasking, so it's already had a context of being evil.
Dude, I'm just like...
So when you take the Beatles and that's demonic. If you put it like drop tune to a D and be Metallica, listen how heavy and satanic that is. Obviously. And the Zeppelins and
So in this culture that they grew up in, any teen who looked a little differently or acted differently, they were viewed as suspicious. There's something going on with those kids.
Yeah, they're up to something.
They're not acting into. I find it interesting that's in the church too. Someone has an opinion like me. Well, she's a Jezebel.
You're in a cult. Yes, you're in a cult. But what cult would you be in?
Let's see. Lilith. Isn't that all about ladies or some crap?
Okay, yeah, you're in a Lilith cult. That sounds about right.
Okay, anyway. So the culture and the environment that they grew up in impacted the case strongly. And I know you're going to touch on that, how this whole viewing of these three things made the whole town go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So let me just tell you how the defense, real quick.
Sorry, Mom. Shout out to Misfit 9307. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, Go ahead, I'm just going to I'm not getting into the case, that's your baby, but I just want to show the differences between how the defense viewed Damien and how the prosecution viewed the boys.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
So here's how the defense defined Damien. His background showed poverty, neglect, and instability, not violence. Okay? His interests in music, books, and spirituality were common among teens. I felt that way too as teens. I read stuff like that.
Yeah.
Being an outsider made him a target for bias, not a suspect with a motive. Okay? He had no history of violent behavior, despite claims of being a dangerous personality.
Dangerous.
Now, this is how the prosecution viewed Damien. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, basically, you know what? I actually didn't write it down. I'm sorry, but they were basically acting like he's the ringleader and he's
Oh,
evil
yeah.
and he bossed the other two around. Okay, so this is how the prosecution defined Jason Baldwin.
Okay.
He was seen as Damien's follower. His peer influence pulled him into criminal behavior, and his
I knew it.
association with Damien was seen of evidence of shared intent. They both had this, they want to murder little kids.
Yeah, they wanted to murder. They wanted to murder. Sacrifice.
Yeah. So here's how the defense defined Jason. He was academically strong, stable, and nonviolent.
Mm-hmm.
Being friends with Damien was typical teenage friendship, not criminal conspiracy. No history of violence or deviant behavior, and was wrongly seen as guilty by association. We see that a lot, don't we?
How we do. Guilty by association.
So here's how the prosecution saw Jessie, and this is terrible. His confession during police interrogation was central evidence. His cognitive limitations were downplayed. It doesn't matter his IQ.
It doesn't matter.
It had nothing to do with it, right?
Doesn't matter.
Any inconsistencies were viewed as lying or manipulation. Although Jessie's statements and confession had several contradictions, the prosecution insisted he knew what happened.
Oh, he knew. He was just trying to backtrack and figure out his story, get his story straight.
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, and then finally, how the defense saw Jessie. He had significant intellectual and learning disabilities. Low reading comprehension made him highly vulnerable to coercive questioning. Well, I don't think the police would coerce him, do you?
No, not even close.
Confession was seen as unreliable and contaminated by leading questions, pressure, and confusion. He more than likely confessed in order to end a very long police interrogation. I don't know how many hours, but I know it was several.
Yep.
Rather, right? So,
yep.
Anyways, so I'm just going to touch on a couple things as far as the music. We hear from people, but all heavy metal music or rock music is Satan, right? So let's just talk about this.
Yeah, sorry
about a few songs. So Enter Sandman by Metallica. You're familiar with it because you like Metallica. Well, we're told that that's evil, right? What is it actually about? It's about childhood nightmares and fear of the unknown. Okay, don't see nothing about Satan in there. Okay. Then I had to think about, what about that creepy prayer parents used to teach their kids? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die, it's like that's creepier than the Metallica song. I think, why were we teaching our kids that? Right?
Is that prayer Catholic?
I don't know, but that's weird, dude. It just popped in my mind when I was working on this tonight. I'm like, yeah, but we're gonna pray those kinds of things with kids, and that's not gonna harm them in any way. Okay, all right. And then as far as Ozzy Osbourne had that song about Aleister Crowley called Mr. Crowley. He wasn't praising Aleister Crowley. He was basically mocking. Ozzy was basically mocking Aleister
Now that
Crowley.
song is awesome on Guitar Hero. Mr. Crowley, bam, bam, bam. Good song. Good song.
But I'm just saying that's another example of, we know I do believe Mr. Crowley was an evil weirdo. He was a homosexual.
Aleister Crowley.
Kids. Yeah, but Ozzy was not praising him. He was really mocking him in the song.
Yeah. So, it was? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I just read the lyrics and read what it was about today. So
Ozzy's been misunderstood. Just a quick shout out if you guys are trying to watch on Rumble. I don't know what's going on. It's not connected. I've been trying to do. That's why I seem quiet. I'm actually trying to get everything going. Kick, we're going strong on Kick. Looks like we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Kick right now. I don't know what's going on with Rumble, so I do apologize. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And finally, the song "Master of Puppets" by Metallica. What is that?
Okay, do you like that song?
No, because I don't like
Metallica. Oh, come on. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it's about addiction.
I like Sad But True. I like that song.
Oh, yeah. I got to turn you on to Metallica. I got to turn you on to Metallica.
So this song is a dark poetic metaphor for drug addiction. The lyrics are written from the perspective of the drug itself detailing how a substance completely takes over a person's life, destroying their free will and dictating their every move. So they are not, they're not, they weren't worshiping drugs, right? Even though a lot of rock stars, metal stars, whatever, they do get in drugs and alcohol. Yeah, we know that, right? But then they're trying to get free from it. So it's like the song Master of Puppets is not praising drugs. So, anyways.
Master of puppets is pulling your strings. Is that Satan? Twisting your mind and stretching your dreams. That song is. I listened to it last night, actually.
Yeah, so anyways, I just wanted to explain to folks that just assume, well, rock
Satan.
music, or anytime a guitar's plugged into an amplifier, Satan enters it,
Yeah.
And then as far as Damien's interest in Wicca.
Okay, let's touch on that.
Okay. He wrote the book High Magic, A Guide to the Spiritual Practice That Saved My Life on Death Row. And, that's his name.
Interesting.
But as a teen, he became interested in Wicca, and occult spirituality is a form of nonconformity. Nonconformist, right?
Nonconformist.
He desired personal transformation to escape the limitations of his impoverished life in the Bible Belt.
It was poor white trash. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he viewed it as, talking about Wicca, he viewed it as a pathway to magic, a practical structural method for developing personal power rather than just viewing these practices as superstition. So again, we don't see anything about, Satan, or you need to go get a live sacrifice, or he felt powerless and he was looking for something to empower him, right? I get that in his...
Yeah.
And it's interesting he didn't turn to God, because I wonder if the Bible Belt community treating him like that totally turned him off to the things of God.
Ouchie. Shout out to the one and only Rob Wilson in the live chat at First Allegiance. Love the name change. He says, I'm listening and while making my lunch. Yep, that was the 80s. We were satanic for playing Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
I don't think you ever played, right, just because you were little in the 80s.
That's before my time,
Yeah,
before my time. But D&D was kind of like in its own little realm by the time Ninja Turtles was probably satanic. I was a big Ninja Turtle guy. But I think what would really top this playlist off on Satanic Panic, because I know we're not done. We're going to talk about Andrea Yates. But I think actually going through a biblical exegesis of who the characteristics of Satan, how Satan functions, how he interacts with people, I think that would really cap it off and say, right? Anyway, I'm sorry.
That would be really good, Jess. Yes, you came up with that. Okay. So then, years later, he writes this book, the High Magic book, right? And this redefines magic as spiritual growth, energy manipulation, and connection with the divine rather than stage illusions or spells. So he wasn't into spells either, okay? So
not Wiccan.
Just a quick couple things on the rituals. He had the fourfold breath, which centered him. These are the things he did in prison. The middle pillar, which was for healing and empowerment. And the lesser rituals of the pentagram for banishing negativity. So then we also see how the pentagram he utilized. Now, we have been taught that the pentagram is used in Satanism. I understand that, right?
Sure.
And me, kind of explaining what he was into and how he believed about these things is not to condone what Damien believes or whatever, because as Christians we have our views on that. But it's to mainly show this was a young man who grew up with not a lot of hope. And I feel like the Bible Belt let him down by the way they looked down on him and treated him. And so even as a man of, how old is he now? Close to 40, maybe?
He's close to 50 now.
Close to 50. How this young man, he's still, to me, Damien is a very intelligent man. Okay. He's blessed to have a good wife. She's been there for him. And I think he's really trying to be a good person at his core, right? I don't think Damien or any of the three of these young men wanted to harm anyone or would harm anyone. So I say all this to say this. if those Christians that were around Damien and Jason and Jessie showed the love of God and did not be so judgmental and ugly towards these young teenagers, maybe they would have been open to the things of God. So,
Amen. And then, that's a shout out to Lauren Rawland. Grace and peace. Sister, good to see you. Good to see you in the live chat. Yeah, I mean, and it's very, very cringy and embarrassing the more I learn about the Christian faith, and not just in the text, but say it again till I'm blue in the face. The history of the church, ecclesiology, is very important when we study our Bible. Where was the church before, centuries before us? We act like we pick up a Bible. I'm the first one understanding this. So all spiritual things, Satan's out, the angel's out, and there's this battle going on. I'm in between. I have to decipher all the spiritual things going on in the air. Trust me, we've thought of that. I've thought of that before, right? This is
right.
It's not new.
Through the history of the church, can we not finally say we have done some horrible things to people in the name of God?
Right. Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, absolutely.
We still do it. Oh, you don't believe in the rapture? Oh, you believe a woman can teach? Oh, you believe, okay, then you must not know Jesus at all.
You don't care about the things of God. You don't care about the things of God.
It continues to turn people off. The infighting within the church. We can't even learn to have a godly debate with one another.
Well, the social digital sphere is pretty hostile when talking about different sects of Christendom, if you will. Eastern Orthodox are just very vile. I don't know if you've been in this. Yes, and I do say my Calvinist brothers are pretty arrogant out there. Some of them are, but they don't represent the totality of Calvinism. But we got the Eastern Orthodox going around talking about, these Protestants and then Catholics and this whole debate going on. But wait, what are we doing? Are we not trying to save a lost world who thinks that Jesus is an idea, or Jesus was an Ethiopian, or Jesus was this samurai? What are we doing?
Right. Because what did Jesus say would be the defining mark of his disciples? Would it be how much they could quote scripture?
Right.
Would it be how much they know about church history? It would be the love they have for one another. And that love continues to be lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sit here and talk about, well, I'm not like that. My church's not like that. Really?
Yeah. My pastor this, my pastor that. Yeah.
Disagree with the Christian and tell me how it goes for you. Now, I thank God you and I both, in fact, me and you would disagree on some things, but our love is still strong and respect for one another. We haven't lost that, because what's more important to us, Jess, that we're building God's kingdom and we take care of each other. That's
we're united in Christ. We're united in Christ. Predestination is a secondary issue. I think it's fun to debate. How does God function? How do these things work? What is the Ordo Salutis, the order of salvation? Those are not primary issues. When we talk about Jesus he's being a lesser God, and then we got a whole different Christology, and that's the problem. We agree on the essentials. So
absolutely. And and for me, when I hear people's, my Christian brothers and sisters in Christ, when I hear them having a different opinion. Now, if they are respectful, nice, you know how we need to be. I'm talking to myself too. They get me thinking, oh, wait, maybe I'm wrong here, or maybe I don't understand that. So I think iron sharpening iron is a good thing.
Right. Amen. Yeah, amen. I mean, yeah. If you guys are just tuning in, please share the live. We would like to get more viewers in here. It's a very interesting case. We're gonna go through it. I got a great, how James White would say it, presentation for y'all. If you guys are ready for it. So, so I guess the big question is tonight we're asking whether the state proved its case, okay? Or whether the fear, rumor, and satanic hysteria filled in the spaces where real evidence should have been. Because once fear takes the witness stand, truth gets shoved into the hallway. And we've talked about this when we talked about the backmasking. We've talked about D&D, how the game actually functions, and it's actually really nerdy.
Forgotten memories. I remember when I was a little girl,
it's a movie.
Oh my gosh!
It's a movie. Okay, so let me share. We're gonna pull up this. Slideshow I have for us today. As we walk through, we're gonna walk through it, and we're gonna see.
Is that your dog?
I'm sorry.
Is it?
It's quiet. Yeah, he's loud. I know he's very loud.
No, I never heard him. It's like
he's very loud, very loud. He's way over there in the next room.
Is he?
Okay, so
Mm,
this is what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about the central points of the Satanic Panic, how fear, weak evidence occur. It's a cult theater. It shaped the West Memphis 3 trial. If you guys have not checked out this trial, you can see all 3 episodes on YouTube. Very intriguing, fascinating, depressing, makes you angry, makes you sad, and makes you happy towards the end as they get out.
right.
These 3 gentlemen are free now. They did spend 18 years in federal penitentiary on capital murder charges.
And they can't even sue the state, dude.
Can't sue. That's what the Alford plea is. The Alford plea.
So messed up to me.
Right. Okay, so okay. So, the central point tonight is simple, okay?
Yeah.
The West Memphis 3 case did not merely happen during the Satanic Panic. It was shaped by it. And I think that distinction matters. We see a lot of stuff that's influenced still to this day. It's not like Satanic Panic has gone away.
No,
It's still shaped by it. So this is a period when the public had already been conditioned to believe that satanic ritual abuse was a hidden crisis spreading through ordinary American life. So when this devastating crime happened, people were not approaching it with a blank slate. They were approaching it with years of cultural fear already loaded into their imagination.
Oh my gosh.
When a community is already primed to see satanic activity everywhere, ordinary or ambiguous details start to change shape. A teenager's clothing stops being a style choice, starts looking like a signal. Strange interests stop looking like adolescent confusion and start looking like motive.
Wow.
Social isolation stops looking like loneliness and starts looking like danger. The kid who was different yesterday becomes a suspect. People were emotionally prepared to fear today.
Oh gosh, dude. This is so disturbing.
Right. So I'm gonna pull up my notes here. I got a lot of we're going through slides, we're going through videos here. So right,
and it goes back to me, just it reminds me of the Salem witch trials again.
Yeah,
well, I think she's a witch. We're not going to even try to really understand this woman out. We just think she's evil, so she needs to die.
She needs to die. She needs to get burned. I'm adding that Salem witch trials probably to the beginning of this playlist because that's kind of where it stems from. We can go further back. We can find this.
Oh yeah, we can.
So, a courtroom is not supposed to ask who made people uncomfortable. It is not. And you hear this through the case when we show the clips. Yeah. Who makes people uncomfortable? It's not supposed to ask who seems strange, who dresses wrong, who listened to the wrong music, or who failed to perform normalcy well enough for the adults in town. A courtroom is supposed to ask what the state can prove. And that is the line we have to keep coming back to. Not what felt suspicious. And it drives me crazy. The more we but we've fallen victim. I have less excuse because I was young, I was impressionable, but a lot of people, they felt the suspicion. It's not about what sounded scary. It's not about what fit the story. What was proven is the question. So if suspicion becomes evidence and fear becomes motive and cultural panic becomes expert testimony, then we're no longer watching justice happen. We are watching a community use the legal system to act out its nightmares. And that should disturb every single one of us in this case. So
well,
we have not seen it.
They're going to use the emotions that people felt over this crime because this crime was horrendous. These 3 innocent babies, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've said it a million times, I really thought the teens were guilty because my emotions were on these little boys.
So everybody in the chat, if you guys have heard of this case, this is back in 1993. Let me know in the chat. The one and only Out of Context with Jim Green.
He's out of his mind.
He's out of context. Grace and peace, brother. Good to see you. We need to link up, man. I miss you, brother. Anyway, we're going to go. So, bear with me. I need a tech guy.
Yeah, that's good that you brought up suspicion. That gets to be a main focal point in court. Yeah, we have a problem then.
So, the prosecution had to tell a story. If you watch it closely with both eyes squinted, right?
Yeah.
This is not unusual. Every trial has a narrative. The state has to explain what happened, why it happened, and why the people sitting in the defense table are responsible. But in this case, the story had a major problem. It was emotionally powerful, but evidentially fragile.
Right.
The prosecution presented a picture of teenage outsiders committing a ritualistic murder. Listen to this. In a community already terrified by stories of devil worship and occult violence.
Yeah.
So this isn't from blank slate, like I said earlier. And that kind of story hits hard because it gives people a framework for something almost impossible to process. So 3 children are murdered. The public wanted an explanation that felt big enough to match the horror. The satanic, and then the Satanic Panic gave them one. So this was not ordinary evil. They said it. This was ritual evil. This was occult evil. This was the thing we have all been warned about. And once that idea takes hold, it becomes very hard to separate what is actually proven from what is merely suggested. So, for instance, Damien Echols, he did not just become a defendant in that framework. He became the embodiment of what people already feared: his clothes, his interests, his personality. You touched on his reputation could all be pulled into one dark portrait. So the prosecution, and it's going to drive you crazy as we go through this presentation. Prosecution did not need every detail to prove the crime directly. They needed the details to create the feelings, and that's the danger. Right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because making a jury feel like someone is the kind of person who could do something is not the same as proving that they did it. And that's the difference between evidence and atmosphere. The prosecution story had atmosphere. It had drama. It had fear. And it did. You watch it. It had the emotional shape of an answer. But the question tonight is whether it had proof. And that is where this case starts to look much less solid than the story made it feel. So let's present this one, the first video. This is the introduction. This is actually the trailer. It's very disturbing. So we're gonna show the trailer of this actual documentary.
In a statement given to the police and obtained by a Memphis newspaper, 17-year-old Jessie Misskelley allegedly confesses to watching 2 other suspects choke, rape, and sexually mutilate 3 West Memphis second graders.
The murders had been part of a satanic ritual.
Satanic worship.
A horrific, ritualistic sacrifice.
We're just sitting on the couch watching TV the night we were arrested.
They had to find somebody to pin this on. This publicity was getting out of hand.
We, the jury, find Jessie Lloyd Misskelley, Jr. guilty of second-degree murder, Jason Baldwin guilty of capital murder, Damien Echols guilty of capital murder.
This doesn't change anything.
Our son was still murdered.
Dead.
Our son
and he was tortured to death by 3 murdering bastards on a ditch bank. He was 8 years old.
Damn system stinks.
It's a great tragedy that kids was killed, but it's also another great tragedy that American citizens, anybody, today's public, can just be picked up for a crime they didn't commit.
Everybody in the town and in the courtroom and on the jury are all blinded by their fantasies about satanic cults.
The criminal confessions are too many manipulated by the police.
I'm going to be wondering if the true killers were actually captured.
Jessie Misskelley Jr., Jason Baldwin, Damien Echols. I promise you, as God is my witness, I'll visit all 3 of your graves.
Yeah, see, Misfit said she's heard of this case. Her husband was researching it out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case. The more you watch, you're like, wow. But it doesn't stop at the first one. The first one, you think it's a closed case. We did for decades. It comes out part 2. I was probably in my 20s. Working at the factory, I was working at Western Forge, and like, wow, there's another case. There's another. That's where they kind of pick up, and we're not going to touch on the ending of it. We have the Johnny Depps, the Peter Jacksons getting involved as activists towards this whole case. They kind of being a voice for them. Damien, I even have an interview. I think that would have been too long, but I was going to play an interview with him on a talk show. He talks about the support he had. He thought they were being on death row for. He said he was in solitary confinement the last 10 years. And so he had to adapt to learning a cell phone, learning how the world works. Just imagine waking up to that, that reality. So here's the opening case against Jessie Misskelley. It's really going to shape the trial here because what we have here is the backbone of the assertion. So when we have Jessie Misskelley as a separate trial, then we have Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin in a separate trial. The lawyers and the defense team of Jason and Damien were pretty smart and not to use the confession of Jessie Misskelley towards their trial. So I thought that was they did everything they could to try to give them the proper defense. But here is the basically what I forgot, Fulgham, I think this is the lawyer and the prosecutors, and
Yeah.
this is his opening statement.
We do not contend that the proof's going to show that every word that came out of his mouth was the truth.
Well, ladies and
Did just what happened?
I don't know. It says
Following Mickey. Okay, whatever. That's fine. Let's play it.
I don't think we're trying
What?
to see anything graphic, are we?
Okay. What happened with
Like
my?
a noise over there.
The jury
No.
forgets about what they're here for, and that is to administer justice.
We expect the proof's going to show that this defendant confessed, that he was not coerced. We do not contend that the proof's going to show that every word that came out of his mouth was the truth.
Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this statement that Mr. Misskelley gave the West Memphis Police Department is a false story.
And this
The
is the
interrogation
defense,
techniques
right?
that were deployed against Mr. Misskelley at the time of his statement on June the 3rd
Yeah.
rendered him completely incapable. They broke his will. They scared him beyond all measure.
The proof is going to show that this defendant was an accomplice to Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin in the commission of these horrifying murders, and we will ask you to return your verdict of guilty on 3 counts of capital murder.
3 counts of capital murder, he says. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So,
There's like a thumping or something. I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's like someone knocking on a door, dude.
no, I don't hear anything.
I do.
mm,
Should I mute my?
I would mute. If you're not speaking, I would just mute. If you want to say something, then unmute. That's probably usually how it works. Yeah. I don't know if anybody can hear me. Okay. So we're gonna bring up the slide again. There we go. Swap out the slide. Okay. So we are on slide 4. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is kind of the layout, the main pieces of the prosecution that they relied on. Okay. So at first glance, we can we can look stronger than it is because there are several pieces sitting next to each other. Jessie Misskelley's confession, the occult motive, the knife. We're going to get into the fiver evidence, witness claims, character evidence. When you hear all that together, it can create the impression that the prosecution had a mountain of proof, right? And that's kind of like, oh wow, they have so many. And that's kind of what got us gravitated towards all this, you know. But that's kind of where we have to be careful, because a pile of weak evidence does not become strong simply because it is piled high. If you stack enough paper plates together, you do not eventually get a dining room table. You get a taller monument to disappointment. The question is not whether the prosecution presented several things. The question is whether those things were reliable, or they're connected as strong enough to carry the weight of a murder conviction. That's what we're going to test. Let me do something real quick, bro. Let me just do this. Okay. It's a lot of wind. I'm sorry. You can unmute when you get a chance, but there's a lot of like wind coming your way. You can. Are you able to unmute?
Do you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, the sound's coming from you, so I'll just put you on.
I
don't know what it is.
Being on, I have nothing on, so
It's okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Something that's driving me crazy.
So we're gonna get into the confession because the confession matters. We'll get into the evidence map though. The knife matters only if it can actually be tied to the murders. Obviously, the fibers matter only if the forensic language. Hold on, real quick. Okay. The occult motive matters only if it was based on real evidence rather than cultural panic. The character evidence matters only if it proves something relevant instead of simply making the jury dislike Damien. And that's kind of what they did. They try to make the jury dislike Damien. That distinction is the heartbeat of this episode. Basically, there's a difference between evidence that proves something and evidence that creates a feeling. This case had plenty of things that created feelings: fear, suspicion for one, disgust, certainty, and the emotional relief of believing the monster had been found. But a murder conviction has to be built on more than emotional momentum. It has to be built on proof. And as we walk through the pieces, we need to keep asking whether they actually locked together or whether the satanic panic helped hold them together in people's minds. And I think that's what's going on. So let's look at this clip from the actual trial. And this is where they're going to be talking about the evidence, the evidence, you will. So let's share this right here. I can pull up and take this, share that. I'm getting better at this. Okay. Let's go to this one.
June the 3rd, did you have an assignment to locate a particular person?
My assignment was to contact Jessie Misskelley Jr.
At that time, was the defendant a suspect?
No, sir.
If he was not a suspect, why were you assigned to contact him?
He was a friend with friends with Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin.
What, if anything, did he tell you during this conversation before the tape recording?
Okay, he had told us that he had attended some satanic cult type meetings that boys along with girls would attend. There would be sessions of sex, orgies as he called them, that dogs and animals had been killed, and in fact those animals, portions of them, have been eaten by the members.
Okay, so how is that evidence? Right? We're hearing a rumor of cult behaviors. There's that's part of his confession, right? Let me see here. We are at. So I think let me see here. There's more evidence right here, allegedly. We're gonna play. This is from the prosecutors on the stand here. See if you can hear this one.
Mention those particular injuries, and you yourself, Mr. Fogelman, you're pointing to the wrong side of the cheek.
Oh. Was there any kind of emotional response?
He had tears coming down his eyes.
All right. Had y'all yelled at him or been mean to him or threatened him or promised him anything? Done any of those things?
None of those things happened whatsoever.
All right.
Dr. Offshay, could you give us some examples of the police being coercive?
Now, this is where the defense steps in, and they're asking for consistency from the police department to see. So this is kind of what's going on right here.
Leading or suggestive during the course of the interrogation?
Yes, I can. Perhaps the most powerful.
I'm sorry, this is a psychologist right here.
Example, in my opinion, is the example of the 8 revisiting of the question of the time at which the killings occurred. The first example occurs on page 3. Detective Ridge says, "All right, when did you go with them?" Mr. Misskelley says, "That morning." Detective Ridge asks, "I'm not saying when they called you, I'm saying what time was it that you were actually there in the park?" Mr. Misskelley says, "About noon." Detective Ridge now says, "Okay, was it after school had let out?" This is immediately after Jessie saying it's at noon. He's now suggesting it must be later by saying, "Is it after school let out?" Jessie says yes. Detective Ridge follows up with his victory on page 24. And this time, Detective Ridge says, and I quote, "Okay, the night you were in the woods, had you all been in the water? Jessie replies, yeah, we've been in the water. We were in it that night, playing around in it. This is the first time in the record that it is directly suggested to Jessie that the correct answer is this happened at night. Immediately upon that being suggested, Jessie responds by accepting, and now he starts to use the word at night, where he had never used it before. That is an influence tactic. It is a way of getting someone to accept something out of pressure and out of suggestion. But that's one example. There are many other examples of manipulation on important points throughout this record.
Mr. Offshay, is your going rate approximately $300 an hour?
No, that's not.
What is it?
My rate is $150 an hour for consultation and $300 an hour for time spent in court or in deposition.
So if you're initially asked to evaluate a case, you don't get the $300 an hour unless you give an opinion that's consistent with what the person asked you wants to hear. If they don't call you as a witness, you don't get your $300 an hour, correct?
Incorrect.
I don't know what the terminology is in Berkeley, California, but when the defendant identified who it was who was castrated, when he indicated that one of the boys was cut in the face, you don't know and you can't give an opinion that any of those questions were coercive in nature, can you?
No, I can't, because the record that we are dealing with is very incomplete, because this part of the record is preceded, as everyone agrees, by over 2 hours of interrogation in which many subjects were discussed, for which we have no record.
Right. Wow. That's messed up.
Yeah, so what's going on?
Mm.
It's that confession. We're going to get into the confession next slide, but the question about how much time was recorded on this interrogation of Jessie Misskelley, and you did bring up that he had a IQ of 70 something.
Yeah.
Many hours were not recorded, so that's what this guy is talking about on the stand. So the guy, but you see how the prosecution is, they're building a narrative to say, hey, you're doing this for money. This is why you're doing it.
To say this, you don't really believe this. Yeah.
So let's go into the actual inconsistencies of Jessie Misskelley's confession. So the confession became one of the most important parts of the case. You know, that makes sense, and it's all hinged on this confession, right?
Right.
So for most people, the word confession, it's final. It feels final, especially in the Bible Belt of West Memphis. That's what we believed when we watched this documentary when it first came out.
Right.
Once they hear that someone confessed, they assume the case is basically over.
Yeah.
But that's where people can get dangerously lazy. A confession is powerful, but it's not magic. It still has to be tested. It still has to be examined. It still has to be compared against the facts of the case.
Right.
False confessions happen, you know, and they act like, the prosecutors act like this never happened.
Right.
That is not some conspiracy theory invented by a guy in a basement surrounded by a red string and a gas station coffee. You know, it's a documented reality. People can confess falsely because they are exhausted, and that's what the gentleman was displaying. Exhausted, scared, confused, pressured, suggestible. Jessie Misskelley is very suggestible.
And he's a teenager.
17 years old. How do you go from being in high school and just doing the things you do, and then being interrogated for a triple homicide facing capital murder charges?
Right.
What would you do in that situation?
Oh, and that's another thing. They did not allow a parent to be with Jessie when he was interrogated.
That's a good point. Yes, his father was not there, and his father actually brought it up during the case. And with Jessie, the defense raised serious concerns. The issue was not merely that he confessed. The issue was how the confession was produced and what parts, if it were recorded, what details lined up, what details did not, whether he was given investigators independent knowledge or being guided toward the answers. Does that matter? I think it matters.
Yeah, right.
Yes, reliable confession should reveal knowledge that only the killer would know. It should fit the crime scene. I think that's when we look at that cases like Dahmer, Bundy. These are things that the killer would know. They
BTK.
corroborate with the actual evidence. It should not have to be rescued over and over again by correction, prompting, and reinterpretation. What is recorded is the fact that these officers are corrected. Well, you said this. Oh, yeah, I did mean that. So you got this reinterpretation, and then these officers are prompting this kid
Right.
to get the answers. How do you not see this? This is ridiculous. It should kind of make people mad. But so if the confession, yeah, it does. If the confession is inconsistent, incomplete, or shaped by the interrogation process, then it does not function the way people assume it does. So in this case, the confession was not doing a lot of heavy lifting, was it? That is why the defense focused on it so intensely, even in the whole case with Jessie Misskelley. You guys can watch all 3 parts on YouTube, FYI. So if the physical evidence is weak and the motive theory is built on panic, then the confession becomes the pillar holding up the room. But if that pillar starts cracking, the whole structure becomes unstable. And that is why we can't treat the word confession like a button that turns off critical thinking.
Right.
So the question is not, did Jessie say something incriminating? The question is, can we trust how that statement was produced, and does it actually match the evidence?
Right.
That is a much harder question.
Yeah.
And I think in the question, the prosecution needed the jury not to feel too deeply. Right? They needed to feel more deeply than to think critically.
There you go. Yeah.
So so here's his confession, which is very kind of interesting. I don't know. It's kind of, they're going to run through it.
Poor kid.
What occurred while you were there?
When I was there, I saw Damien hit this one boy real bad. Then he started screwing him and stuff.
All right, you've got in front of you a picture that was taken out of the newspaper, I believe. It's got 3 boys. And these are the 3 boys that were killed on that date in Robin Hood Woods. Which one of those 3 boys is it you say Damien hit? The 3rd picture, which will be...
This boy right here? Yeah.
All right, that's the Byers boy.
Christopher.
That's who you're pointing at?
So you saw Damien strike Chris Byers in the head.
Right.
What did he hit him with?
He hit him with his fist and bruised him all up real bad. Jason turned around and hit Steve Branch.
Okay.
And he started doing the same thing. Then the other one took off. Michael Moore took off running. So I chased him and grabbed him and held him till they got there, and then I left.
Inspector Gitchell, let's talk about the things that Jessie told you that are just absolutely incorrect. Now, on page 9 of his statement, Inspector Gitchell, Jessie says that the murders took place around noon. How did you know that was incorrect?
Because the young boys were still in school.
Did at any time when he was telling you these things that you knew were incorrect, did it ever occur to you that what he was telling you was false? His entire story was false?
In Jessie's case, I feel like he did tell us a good bit of the truth, but then they also lessen their activity in a statement. That's just common, at least in my 20 years career.
Is it common for the police to simply ignore these big, obvious problems and just assume that everything else that he's telling you has got to be correct?
Jessie simply got confused.
Oh, boy. Really? Wow. That's messed up.
Yeah. So we coerced him into a confession.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, and if you really think about it, he got confused because we gave him the details, and he couldn't keep the details together because we needed a story to fill in.
Right. All the things he said that we agree with was the truth. But
Right.
when he was messing up on some things we don't agree with, he was just confused.
If he said over and over that it happened during the day and it doesn't corroborate with the actual time of the event or the crime, then
Right?
isn't that a key? It's not that I used this left hand to strangle him and right hand to strangle him. It was the fact that it was day or night. What was the sun out or was the sun not?
And he changed the day, the time, 3 different times. First, Jessie says around noon. Then it was like after school. Then it was at night.
It clearly shows he wasn't there. Okay, now, if you guys are tuning out, tune in here. We are going to go into Mr. Mr. Cold Expert. So,
Oh, the experts. Dear God, this guy.
so this is where the Satanic Panic stops being underground noise, background noise, and walks directly into the courtroom wearing a tie. The prosecution brought a Dale Griffiths as a cult expert. His role was important because the state needed a motive, right? So, and that's mostly when this dramatic documentary came on. It was why. That's the biggest question. Why? If you can fill in the why, yeah. They needed to explain why these teenagers would commit such a horrific crime. Without the satanic framework, the case had a much harder time emotionally making sense to people. So Griffiths helps provide that framework. Thank you, Griffiths. He interpreted the crime through alleged occult symbolism and ritual meaning, the number of victims, the timing, the injuries, the supposed ritual context. All of it could be arranged into a theory that sounded specialized and authoritative. But this is where things get incredibly dangerous. Why? Because once someone begins with the assumption that the crime is satanic, almost anything can be made to sound like confirmation.
Well, then this is what kills me too, Jess. It can even be when we look to church fathers or biblical scholars, where like they got it down. Nothing they've said is wrong. Not one thought they had is wrong. It's like we got to quit saying some people they just are never wrong.
Right.
It was never wrong. Have you never been
Well,
wrong?
and in this case with Griffiths, the number 3 can become suspicious. The presence of blood can become ritualistic, right? Well, they didn't actually find blood. Nighttime can become, then he talks about nighttime can be meaningful. A teenager's music or clothing can become part of the motive. Suddenly, normal ambiguity is no longer ambiguity, it's symbolism.
It's like with the Salem witch trial. Well, she had this weird birthmark. I told you, Jess,
Yeah.
I have a birthmark that's shaped like a giraffe on my thigh.
Yeah,
I think
Satan.
someone would go, I think she's a witch.
She's in a cult, yeah. That is not careful investigation. I don't care. That is interpretation running wild while wearing the costume of expertise. And the number 3 issue is a perfect example of how absurd this can become. You know how many things you can come up with the number 3? Like, come on.
Well, it's like that book of wisdom with everything with 7 this, 7 this.
It's the same concept you're getting from this guy 20 years prior to that book, yeah. 3 is one of the most common symbolic numbers in human history. Christianity has the Trinity. Christ rises on the 3rd day. Peter denies Christ 3 times. Scripture is full of 3s. So when someone treats the number 3 like it is inherently a cult, that is not scholarship. That is numerology with a courtroom badge. The danger is that juries hear the word expert, right?
Right.
Especially in the 90s. In this context of satanic panic, they assume that the person must know what he's talking about.
Yeah, and I asked you, I think on the phone tonight, I said, well, Jess, what about when 2 experts disagree?
Right.
That's what we do, right?
I mean, sometimes it could be as simple as an expert is just confident with a confident man with a folder. I mean, what is he really talking about?
With glasses on, right?
America has been terrorized by confident men with folders for generations, have they not?
Thank you.
This is why this testimony matters so much. It gave the prosecution's theory an academic-sounding coat. It allowed cultural fear to enter the courtroom as if it were specialized knowledge. This guy's kind of hilarious when we play him.
He is hilarious.
And once panic is allowed to dress up as expertise, a jury may not realize they are being asked to mistake suspicion for proof. This is basically suspicion for proof.
Right.
Let's pull up Mr. Griffiths. You're gonna love this, guys. You're gonna love.
Yeah, I was dying when I watched.
You're a genius on this one here. Okay.
On the 3rd, did you have an assignment to locate a particular person?
My assignment was to contact Jessie Misskelley Jr.
At that time, was the defendant a suspect?
No, sir.
If he was not a suspect, why were you assigned to contact him?
He was a friends with Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin.
What, if anything, did he tell you during this conversation before the tape recording?
Okay, he had told us that he had attended some satanic cult type meetings that boys along with girls would attend. There would be sessions of sex, orgies, as he called them.
Really?
That dogs and animals had been killed, and in fact, those animals, portions of them, have been eaten by the members.
I
Did they
believe
ever
is
find
there's
any
angels
skeletal
on
remains
earth. I believe.
Huh?
Did they ever find any skeletal remains of these animals?
No, they have not.
Because I don't think they went and looked. What do you think?
I don't think they have. I think I skipped Griffith. I'm sorry.
And this guy.
I'm looking for Griffiths. I think I skipped him. I don't know why. He's supposed. Did I timestamp him wrong? I think I timestamped him wrong.
I've done that.
We'll see him again. We'll see again. But let's.
Maybe you can just type in his name and it'll pull up.
It's fine. I got it here. I got some information. The gentleman here. So.
But even the way he's talking, dude, to me, he's like, this is all like an expert to me.
So instantly, if you, I highlighted in blue if you want to look at the details. So degrees without coursework. When asked what classes he had taken to earn his master's and doctoral degrees between 1982 and 1984, Griffiths admitted on the stand that he had taken none. Unaccredited institution. Griffiths testified that he received his PhD from Columbia Pacific University, a correspondence-based institution. The university was later shut down in 2000 by court order for operating as a degree mill. I can show you the evidence for that right here.
Wow.
Columbia Pacific University, CPU, a Marine County-based correspondence school, lost its state approval in 1995 and was permanently shut down by court order in December 1999. California authorities who prosecuted the school as a diploma mill based on closure on findings of severe academic laxity and fraudulent degree practices. Right here.
Oh my God.
Worthless credits. The university granted excessive academic credit for life or experiential learning with ensuring it met college level standards.
Wow, dude. So he really wasn't an expert, is what you're saying.
So he basically no, he wasn't an expert. Not the least bit. Not the least bit.
Oh my gosh, that's disturbing.
Yeah, it is pretty disturbing. I'm sorry, we'll come back to Dale Grit. He's got another clip in here.
Yeah,
Let me make sure my timestamps are correct. 29, 26. So
wow.
We are looking at 28, 22. I think I have it here. Yes, I have it queued up here. So this is where a case should become solid. So no, not emotional, not spooky, not based on whether someone gives off bad vibes, just solid, right? This should be solid. This is yet Casey Anthony walks free with a.
I don't get that one.
Oh my goodness. So physical evidence is supposed to anchor the case. It is supposed to pull us away from rumors, expressions, and dramatic theories and force us back to what can actually be demonstrated. But in this case, the physical evidence had serious problems. Take the knife, for example. Or look at the knife. A knife in a courtroom has power. It is a visual. It is unsettling. It makes people lean forward. But the emotional impact of an object is not the same as evidential value. The question is not whether the knife looks scary. Most knives do look scary. We'll say that.
Right? Yeah.
That's sort of the point. Nobody designed a knife and thinks, let's make this look like a friendly office supply or something, you know?
Cute little knife.
Yeah, cute little knife. The question is whether the prosecution could prove it was connected to the murders. That's what the point is. So if that connection cannot be established clearly and cleanly, then the knife is not the dramatic breakthrough it may appear to be. It is an object the jury is being invited to feel something about. The same issue appears with the fiber evidence. I don't think I have much on that, but it's the same issue with that. Closely resembles something. They're just kind of vague about it. People hear forensic language and often assume it means more than it does. A fiber being consistent with, that's what they used, consistent with something. It does not mean it definitely came from that source. Similarity is not identity, possibly not proof. And in a murder trial, those distinctions are not academic nitpicks. They are the difference between evidence and overstatement. So that is why the language matters so much. So if the jury hears cautious forensic wording and translated emotionally into certainty, then weak evidence becomes much more powerful than it should be. And that is one of the reoccurring problems in this case. Sadly, things that should have been treated carefully were given dramatic weight. Objects and forensic claims that needed narrow interpretation were allowed to feel bigger because they fit the story of prosecution, fit the story that the prosecution was telling. So it's not how proof is supposed to work. It really is. And the evidence should shape the story, and the story should not inflate the evidence. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's just ridiculous. So,
wow.
Let's play that clip on the knife. Guys, click that like and subscribe button if you guys are getting anything out of this. If you guys are getting anything out of this. Okay, here we go.
Detective Allen, I want to direct your attention to November the 17th, 1993. Were you asked to make contact with some property owners at Lakeshore Trailer Park and also get with the Arkansas State Police dive team?
Yes, sir, I was.
And after a period of time of searching, do you know whether any items were recovered?
Yes, sir.
Mark for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 77 and ask if you can identify that.
Yes, I can identify this by my 11/17 of 93 M. Allen that I put here.
Where did you get the knife?
I got this knife from a diver with the state police.
How long did this search take place?
How long?
Yes, sir.
From memory, I'm thinking maybe 10:30 a.m. is by the time they got suited up and started to look.
And you quit it when?
They located the knife at 11:35 a.m.
So I have.
Or 11:30, 11:35.
About an hour.
About an hour and a half, yeah.
Are you telling this jury that this knife is the murder weapon? Is that what you're telling this jury?
No, sir, I'm not telling the jury that.
Okay, now that we got to understand that.
What day were these individuals charged? What day did you all charge Damien Echols with this crime? It was June the 3rd.
Yes, sir.
And what day was it that you were out there searching this lake?
This was on 11/17 of 93.
November 17 of 1993.
Yes, sir.
What's that saying?
Yeah, so they 5 months later, there's no stab wounds on the bodies on these three boys. You know that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But yet it's just something to give shock.
You have a knife in court, and it's a pretty good sized knife.
Uh-huh.
If I was in there, I'd be like, oh my God. Yeah. That'd be pretty
These, and that's what we initially took when we first seen this documentary. We're like, oh my, how horrific! They are even more monsters. Anything can pile on these kids.
Are you going to talk about when? I think it was Jessie's mom that actually threw that knife in the river.
No, actually, I don't have anything on that.
Okay.
But
Because I think she actually threw it in there. I could be wrong, but this was years ago. So, yeah.
ridiculous. Isn't that racist? Okay, so let's just slow down here. Okay, so let's slow down. The defense was not just throwing out technical objections for sport; they were pointing to real problems. Okay, and I like the fact that the defense was really questioning the prosecution team and these.
Yeah.
No one saw it. No one saw it. They already had the story. They had the villains. They had the plot, the why. It was already a done case.
Yeah.
So Jesse's interrogation had major issues that we just saw in his confession. The confession contained inconsistencies. The physical evidence did not conclusively tie the three teenagers to the murders. The so-called occult motive depended heavily on cultural assumptions. Right. Alternative leads and unresolved questions deserved more attention than they received. Those are not minor complaints. Those are the kinds of issues that should make a jury pause. Why did they not?
Right?
Why did they not? Because panic does not like pauses. Panic wants momentum. Panic wants certainty. And we talked about this with the rock music, with the Dungeons and Dragons. Michelle tells all. Alice, you know, it's the certainty. Panic wants the story to keep moving toward the villain it already has chosen.
Yeah, we need a villain because it's way too uncomfortable to think some of us humans can be total monsters.
Or the fact that we've been misunderstood just because we dress a certain way, or the fact that there's mental illness involved and not a board game and dice that has summoned a spell. We got to think these things through, especially Christians. That's very disappointing for people, self-professed Christians who are dealing with this. This is the target audience in West Memphis.
Well, I think we've been taught, Jess, that you can't have logic and faith. They're two polar opposites. That's not true. I was taught that
Mm-hmm.
in my former church.
The defense, yeah, that's pretty sad. The defense could point to gaps. This is what's crazy about the defense. If you really pay attention to the defense, they can point to gaps. The prosecution had a terrifying frame. The defense could challenge the confession, but the prosecution could point back to the emotional power of the statement. So the defense could question the physical evidence, but the prosecution could keep the jury inside the atmosphere of ritual murder. Right?
Because fear is powerful.
Right. And when a whole community is afraid, atmosphere can start to feel like evidence. And that's the danger here in this case. The defense was asking the jury to slow down and think things carefully. The prosecution's theory gave the jury the story that felt complete. And the people love complete stories, especially when they are grieving. Because 3 little boys, I mean, look, everybody was grieving on this. This was a horrible crime, right?
Right, but just the video footage you showed us, where we see the teens' moms and their parents, they look just as devastated.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a story only feels complete because fear has filled in the missing parts, and that is what we have to. That's why we keep watching for in this trial. You know, it's just it's the fear of it. The fear of it.
So sad.
Okay, we're gonna see more of that here. Let's share this tab here. I'm trying to get this slide. Hopefully my slides and videos are feeling cohesive. That's my whole point of this presentation. Hope I'm not overloading with information, but here we go with the fear.
Do you have an opinion as to whether
There he
or
is.
not there are occult overtones or evidence of occult involvement in these particular murders?
Well, the date being close to Beltane.
Let's just remind our viewers, this is the expert. You just read about the school he went to and it got shut down.
What a holiday, May 1st. Also, the day before that is Walpurgisnacht. Then you go into the fact that some groups, occult cult groups, or will use a full moon. In several occult books, they will talk about
Several occult books, but he doesn't name one. Several occult books. Anybody?
Let's say the Wolfman movies have been around forever, and they talk about the full moon. So should we believe that there's Wolfmen out there too, Jess?
Yeah, it's just really sad when you look at this in light of what we've been studying, seeing the hysteria of on already. A narrative is already there. These kids didn't stand.
Are just believing this.
Teenagers didn't. The teenagers didn't stand a chance. It's really sad for them. You know, and they're very, very bitter. They're trying to get over it, and pray for them. I know Jason is a complete atheist. He's totally shut off of God, and he doesn't look into that stuff.
Right.
Damien Echols is still searching, if you want to call it that. Jesse, I don't know what he's doing now, but they're older men now, and they've been out. And I'm sure they're bitter towards it.
Jesse's so cute. When he got let out, he's like, "I'm just trying to keep myself out of trouble." I'm like, "Oh, he's so cute."
Yeah, exactly.
So innocent, you know.
All right, more from the expert.
Yeah.
the life force of the blood. Usually the younger the individual, the more pure it is, the more power or the force it has. A lot of times they will take blood and store it for other services and other use, as well as.
Where is his facts he's getting this from?
He's
watching horror movies, it sounds like.
It's one thing to say, you know, the Zoroastrians believed that blood from a young virgin would give you power, and quote here, blah, blah.
Right.
But to say that some believe and some, so who are we talking about? Who is this that believe that?
Yeah, to me, it sounds like you just got done watching a Wolfman movie with Lon Chaney.
You sound like you're making it up there, Dale.
Consume it or bathe in it.
Now, the item that's drawn on the front, what is that?
That is a pentagram. That happens to be a Wiccan or white witchcraft pentagram.
All right. Now, if you would open and look to the front page.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, explain what that is.
That's confusion to me.
All right.
And the reason why we got
Hold on. So hold on.
That's confusion to me.
Does he know that could be anything? It could be a Star of David. It's interpretation. So if he's I'm not an expert, but what I do know is primary sources on religious texts. You have to understand where certain symbols come from. It could be an ancient Near East. It could be African. It could be from the East. It could be Hinduism. It could be. When you say it is absolute nonsense.
Right, because I already explained Damien. When he was interested in the Wiccan religion, the pentagram was used to thwart off negativity. It had nothing to do with Satanism or whatever. So
I think aren't they? They basically pagans and not.
Yeah. And
paganism, like isn't it like with nature?
Yeah,
They believe the God is in the world and within nature, stuff like that.
I actually worked with a pagan, very sweet young girl.
Right.
And yeah, she believed nature and all this kind of stuff, right? I shared my faith with her, but
yeah,
she was a very sweet girl, very loving. It's like we act like anybody's involved in anything that's not a Christian is just, it must all be about Satan and they're evil.
Yeah.
And
Well, what's interesting is this trial never defines who Satan is according to what religious text. It's Satan. So obviously the target audience is going to be these independent fundamental Baptists within the Bible Belt. So there's your villain.
Right.
The victims themselves or the defendants themselves can't define what they mean by Satan. You already have a Satan. That's the Satan that they're worshiping. Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, we want them in prison for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Wow.
But he's an expert.
White witchcraft, Wiccan pentagram. Then we have upside down crosses, which comes from another type of occultism.
What type of occultism do the upside down crosses?
That's black witchcraft.
Is it Wicca, Satanism, or both?
Both.
Okay. And did you notice anything in particular about the book?
There's a chapter in here called Rise of the Devil, and it is underlined in red. And there's a couple
red as blood
sentences in there reference to blood and its life force.
How were
okay? That's just not. It's not concrete at all.
We do know, and I even touched on this. Damien was also interested in the occult. He was trying to find something to give him some kind of power, as he felt powerless. But did he look into these things because he wanted to do evil things? Right, and that's what they're trying to get to. They're trying to connect those dots, you know. So.
They're connecting dots that aren't there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at this. This slide really just captured the conflict at the center of the case. This is basically, the prosecution had a frightening frame. The defense had reasonable doubt. Okay, that's what the defense does.
Right.
The prosecution wanted the jury to see the murders through the lens of ritual killing. The defense kept asking where the hard evidence was. Right. I think they did a really good job. The prosecution leaned into occult symbolism. The defense argued that symbolism is interpretation, not proof. The prosecution relied heavily on Jessie's confession. That's where they kind of stuck their flagpole in. The defense focused on how that confession was produced, why it should not be treated as simple, clean, undeniable evidence. And then there is the character issue. This is the one of the most troubling parts of the case, and in my opinion, because Damien Echols, he could be made to look like the kind of person people already feared. His appearance, interests, and reputation became emotionally usable to the prosecution. But making someone look strange is not the same as proving they committed murder. There's a big difference there. So,
can I say this, Jess?
Yeah.
To me, it's not just Damien, he's an outcast. He looks strange to people. What about so many Christian leaders or youth leaders right now in our lifetime that look good, sound good, must be holy because they're in church every Sunday, and they're abusing kids? Is that not, shouldn't that be satanic panic?
Well, it has to have devil horns and craziness,
I'm just saying, where is our discernment?
I know.
Where was the discernment of this community?
It wasn't there. It wasn't there. Fear.
That's so
I think That's where the character evidence becomes dangerous. Once a jury dislikes the defendant, they may start interpreting everything against him. They may begin to feel guilty before the evidence has actually established it. That's not justice. That's social punishment wearing a legal uniform. And we need to say this clearly. We've been saying this on this playlist, or however you want to. The state does not get to use the defendant's personality as cock for the holes in the case. It does not get to take teenage weirdness, emotional instability, dark interests that you pointed out, or community rumors. These are rumors, and use them as a substitute for proof. So being strange might make people uncomfortable. It might make parents whisper. It might make church ladies form a prayer change with surveillance powers, but it does not prove murder. That's what was going on in this case. And if we cannot keep the distinction clear, then the courtroom becomes just another place where the crowd punishes whoever fits the nightmare best. And I do like what the prosecution says, or the defense team, against Mr. Dale Griffiths, because they're going to challenge him on his credentials. And I love this part. This is probably the highlight of the trial here.
Yes, I didn't even pick up on the holes the defense was trying to get answers for.
Ridiculous.
I thought they were guilty.
Oh, yeah. And we fell victim to it, too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But check out this cross check, I like to call it.
This is a mail order college, isn't it? What classes did you take between 1980 and 1982 to obtain your master's degree? What classes?
I testified.
I'm asking, what classes? What classes did you take?
I told you, I answered that before, none.
You did not take any classes. Between 1982 and 1984, when you became a PhD, what classes did you take?
None.
None. Okay.
And everyone's okay with that, right?
I really think that maybe it should have been pointed out earlier, and they really should have drove it home. But what's sad is that the defense team really put the faith and hope in the jury and the community to say, hey, let's think these things through. And they really weren't. They already had their mind made up, in my honest opinion.
Oh, wow.
They could have leaned in more on stuff like this and say, so you have a professional, an expert here who's talking about occultism. Again, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So that's the driving motive of this case. What's the driving motive of this case? That these three teenage boys ritualistically and occultly, satanically murder these three boys. Yeah. That's the driving force. You have your expert on the stand to prove this, yet you challenge his credentials. It doesn't fall through. He says he took no classes for 2 years from 1982 to 1984.
To get his PhD.
And
so how was he an expert?
God bless the defense team, but they really could have drove it home there. But I mean,
now,
we can't.
Are you going to talk about some of the evidence withheld, like the turtles, or no?
No, I think we're going to go into. I think I have one more because we're running out of time here.
Okay. But maybe we can just give a quick blurb about the turtle thing after.
Yeah, go for it if you have the information there.
Well, I'm just saying that the part of the case was they accused, I think it was Jason, of actually dismembering, was it Stevie Branch? And it turned out, no, there were turtles in the lake that actually...
Yeah, it was. It's what it was. That was the narrative. Was one of them was castrated? Yes, that one of them was castrated.
They put that information in the courtroom setting. That no, that's not true. This was done by animals.
Right. This was years later because you already had a motive and a story. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's sad though.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have. I think I can just take this one down because we have it's just notes here.
Just going.
Yeah, Griffiths was pretty funny because I think that was there's just my notes basically. So this is the cue sheet. We kind of reviewed everything. Dale Griffiths' testimony, Nicole, Jessie Misskelley trial opening and closing, courtroom camera context, confession clip context. But what is it all driving? And it said the closing turn is that the Satanic Panic turned suspicion into a lens. Once the lens was installed, the trial started interpreting everything through it.
Oh boy!
And that was really the biggest mistake going on in that trial. But what is the call to Christians? What are we getting from this? Why are we doing this? Let me take this down. I'm sorry. And then I'll read this, and then we can go into closing and probably be done with for the night because I didn't realize we're at an hour and a half. So when we talk, and we're not done with the Satanic Panic playlist, right? When we talk about the Satanic Panic, we talk about the West Memphis 3. When we talk about hysteria, the fear, the rumors, the fake experts, my cousin's neighbor's youth pastor heard from a guy at a gas station theology. We are not just digging up old history because we ran out of a modern nonsense.
Right.
Modern nonsense is fully stocked. Humanity needs it keeps that pantry full, like it's preparing for the apocalypse with canned beans and YouTube thumbnails. We're talking about this because the spirit of that era is still here. It is still here. It may not always be wearing the same outfit. It may not have the same 1980s news anchor hair, the same grainy VHS documentary music, the same concerned suburban mom whispering about Dungeons and Dragons, like the dice themselves were forged in the lava pits of Mordor, you know. But the panic is still here, right? It just changes costumes. Back then, it was heavy metal records, role playing games, black T-shirts, weird teenagers, and the idea that every kid who owned a skull ring was apparently one goat sacrifice away from becoming the regional manager of hell. Today it is whatever the internet decides to scream about before breakfast. Right now we have the UFO nonsense. We need to touch on that. And Christians, real Christians, Bible-believing Christians, people who claim to worship the God of truth cannot keep reacting to the world with the same fear, the same gullibility. Can we? That mob instinct, then act surprised when unbelievers look at us and say, so this is your wisdom? I agree, you know.
Right.
Because that is the question. What are we showing the world when we panic like the world, accuse like the world, gossip like the world, slander like the world, and then sprinkle a Bible verse on top like parsley on a gas station hot dog? What exactly are we testifying to? Are we showing the world Christ, or are we just showing them fear with a church bulletin? Because, I mean, there is a difference.
Yeah.
The Bible does not call us to be naive. It does not call us to pretend evil is not real. It does not call us to be soft on darkness. So it's not what we're saying. So don't misconstrue our message. It doesn't call us to ignore sin, abuse, wickedness, deception, the spiritual dangers of reality, right? No serious Christian believes that, and we definitely don't believe that here. Scripture tells us to be sober-minded. It tells us to test the spirits. It tells us to expose the works of darkness. It tells us Satan prowls like a roaring lion. But apparently somewhere along the way, some Christians heard be sober-minded and interpreted that as believe every rumor your aunt posts on Facebook in all caps. All right, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not discernment. That is not maturity. That is not courage. That is just wearing a fear, wearing a cross necklace. And the West Memphis 3 case should haunt us, not in a spooky turn off the lights and cue the dramatic thunder kind of way. You know what I mean? It should haunt us morally. It should make us stop and ask how a community in the Bible Belt, surrounded by churches. I mean, you see it in the documentary. They're surrounded by churches, surrounded by people who claimed to know truth, justice, righteousness, and the character of God, could be swept up into such reckless judgment, because that's exactly what happened. And that's the ugly part of this case. This is not just happened in some distant pagan land where nobody had ever heard the Bible. This happened in a culture soaked in Christian language. Come on now, what are we doing? People knew church words. They knew Bible phrases. They knew how to talk about evil. They knew how to sound zealous. But zeal without knowledge is not holiness. It's a loaded weapon in the hands of the immature. Calling Christians out.
Yeah.
And when so-called Christian zeal is detached from patience, truth, evidence, wisdom, justice, and love of neighbor that you called out earlier, thank you, Mom, it does not defend the faith. It embarrasses it. It tells the watching world that Christians are not people of truth, but people of panic. It tells them we do not need facts as long as we have a villain. It tells them we have replaced justice with vibes, evidence with rumors, and biblical discernment with he looks weird, so clearly he communes with Beelzebub behind the Dairy Queen. And brothers and sisters, we got to do better. We got to do better. Not because the world deserves a polished PR campaign from Christians, but because Christ deserves faithful witnesses. The answer to evil is not hysteria. The answer to darkness is not paranoia. The answer to deception is not Christians turning into spiritual conspiracy raccoons, digging through the trash, every rumor and holding up the banana peel like, behold, proof of satanic network.
Right. And we've got to understand as Christians, and I've said this a million times, is Jesus was the perfect balance of grace and truth. You can't have one without the other. For God so loved the world That's sinners. That was me and you before we knew Christ. That's people living in darkness, people doing drugs, people doing horrible things. God died for them.
Right.
But we act like, well, we don't like your music, so we're going to treat you like you're a piece of crap.
Right. And if we believe in Christ and we believe that Christ conquered sin, death, hell, and the grave, then maybe, just maybe, we can survive a teenager owning a black notebook or a T-shirt or like metal, right?
Did not Paul say it's the kindness of him, God's kindness, that leads you to repentance? Now, how are we going to get people to hear the gospel if we have no love, we have no concern for their soul? We just want to tell them how horrible they are.
Grace and peace to the one and only Jimmy James. Yeah, Jimmy James.
So I'm just saying, just that.
Yeah.
Yes, we are to hate those sin and those things that destroy people. Yes, absolutely. But we've got to love the person that's lost in those things. We have to care about their soul. God cares about their soul. Why don't we care?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can show the world that Christianity is not fear with hymns attached. I mean, like I said before, where I see a lot of Christians like that lady at Edward Scissorhands just playing the organ, scared of the whole world. You know, that's not what Christians are called to do. Right. Christians are called to be anchored in the risen Christ. So we are
to be light.
Right. So
the message of Christ was always he's trying to minister to the lost, the downtrodden, the outsiders, right? He would be ministering to Damien and Jason and Jessie, right? And I'd say we have a rebuke for the church folks of that town. That's what I think, right?
Yeah, we definitely got to do better. We have a history of mistakes and immaturity. You know, we got to be humble. We got to be sharper than what we're doing. We got to. Discernment is not optional out there, guys. We know this. Biblical maturity is not optional. And when we're looking at I think a lot of comments from bless his heart, Michael, what's his name? The stepdad, that was kind of, the crazy one.
Oh yeah.
He's talking when Jessie Misskelley gets convicted, he brings up the 10 steps of AA. I'm like, and the Lord said, grant me this serenity to know the difference of it. It's like, that's AA. That's not the Bible. Like, oh my goodness. What are we? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Like, what are we doing, dude? So anyway,
just 3 young men's lives were destroyed because the church had no discernment then. Neither did the townspeople. Neither did the jurors. It's like
what's crazy is Damien Echols at 18 years old in his jumpsuit, ready to go to prison, says this is Salem witch trials. 18. He already knew what the hysteria was.
I remember him said that. And at first watching him, he's quiet. There's a point where he laughed in court, but I'm like, these are 3 babies that are scared.
They're babies, man. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know they were sent to prison. One was sent to the death row for capital murder. They didn't know what that was at 18. But anyway,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, we ran through this one. I can't believe it's almost 2 hours. But anyway, moving.
Next week is going to be more disturbing than this. I'm sorry, but this whole next scene we're doing.
Yeah, if you want to introduce it, we can give it shout out to the live chat, and then we can end the stream.
Andrea
What is next?
Yates. We know Andrea Yates drowned her 5 little children. And we're going to talk about why she did that. It's much more than her mental illness.
And the influence, the influence behind it. So, So shout out to the live chat. We had the one and only Misfit 9307. Shout out to Rob Wilson.
Yes.
It's not Love Agenda no more. It's First Allegiance. Get it right.
Oh, he changed it, huh?
The one and only Out of Context with Jim Green. Miss Lauren Rowland, grace and peace. We also had, I think, Jimmy James was here. That's pretty cool. Someone out. He is a friend on Facebook I have. Then we also have Kosa Tulin from Kick out there watching. Obviously, Willie Valerie Jr. for sure. Reach out to me, bro. We got to do some stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
So we will catch y'all in the next one, probably next week on Andrea Yates.
God bless.
So God bless.